Hi, welcome back to another episode of Riding Tandem, the podcast where we delve into the stories of entrepreneurs, talk about starting and growing business, and being great leaders. I'm Vivian, your host, and today I'm thrilled to have a very special guest, Rachel Nagunst, the dynamic force behind Anytime Tees, which is a custom apparel business that's become a staple in her community. Rachel today shares her journey from a home-based business to the 4,200 square foot facility where her business is housed now and a growing team, which is with Anytime Tees. And it's a testament to her dedication, her entrepreneurial spirit. I know you're going to love it. Rachel's not only built a successful business, but she's also fostered countless community connections through her work. And so we talk about that as well. So I invite you to join me as we dive into Rachel's inspiring story, her philosophy about done is better than perfect and how that's played out, and also how she's using branded apparel to bring people together and help businesses grow and thrive. So it's an episode I know you're not going to want to miss, so be sure to dive in. And if you're loving the Riding Tandem podcast, then I invite you to please take a moment to subscribe on whatever platform that you're listening on. That helps us continue to bring you great content. And be sure to check out our weekly email that comes right to your inbox, full of inspiration, stories, notices when the podcast drops with some special notes direct from me, as well as some great inspiration from our team. So be sure to check that out. All of the links for that and more are in the show notes. Okay, let's dive in. Well, Rachel, welcome to today's podcast. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited. This is a first podcast for me, and so I'm excited to just kind of flow with you a little bit and chat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I didn't know this was your first one, so that makes it like even better. I love it. Debut.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of your illustrious podcasting career.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Well, Rachel, this is Rachel Nagunst for everyone who's listening in. Rachel, you're the owner of Anytime Tees and Custom Apparel, which is actually a business located right here in Council Bluffs where we record the podcast. And what I found really interesting as I was just getting to know you a bit is that Anytime Tees is not just about printing t-shirts. So we're going to talk about that for sure, just what it is and what your business is. But I'm excited because I think we're going to talk today about how getting things done is better than being perfect and how apparel can just have a great, it's like a great way for businesses and organizations to represent themselves. Absolutely. So I'm excited for that. And we'll talk about all kinds of other things because stuff just pops up along the way. So I think it'll be great.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm excited.
Awesome. Okay, so Rachel, we should start at the beginning. And what I find so fascinating about your business is that you started it in your home, but now you have is it 4,200-ish square foot facility that you and your team are using?
Yeah. So I actually started the business when I was working at another similar company.
Okay.
And I always say long story short, but it's still a long story. So
perfect. We like long stories.
That's a misnomer. I started when I was working at, probably a lot of people locally are familiar with Midwest Sports in the Mall of the Bluff. So I worked there, and the plan was for me to buy into that business. But at the time they were in a franchise agreement that they just couldn't get out of. So the owner of that at the time said, go ahead and start your own. We'll kind of support you through that. And once we get out of this franchise agreement, we will combine. And then unfortunately, by the time that happened, everything had left the mall, Target and JCPenney's, all those anchors and those big stores. And the owner there wasn't prepared to leave the mall. And kind of just some things had changed with her plan personally. Mm-hmm. And so buying in didn't work. And by that time, I was 2 years into doing it at my house, and had built up a pretty steady clientele of customers through my connections and coaching, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit. And so I just said, okay, well, I'm going to keep going and doing this on my own. So I did it another 2.5 years from my house. So about 4.5 years in total. And then moved into our first location, which was about 1,500 square feet. and just have kind of steadily grown. So we were in that spot for 4 years and then outgrew it and moved into our current location where we're at 4,200 square feet. And we've been there for, I think, almost 7 years that we've been in that location. So just kind of steady growth. So we just celebrated our 14-year anniversary last weekend. So just kind of steady growth through those years.
Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a definitely a big accomplishment. I'm not especially great at celebrating those accomplishments. I'm kind of okay, let's keep on trucking, but it is definitely a big accomplishment. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the team that we have there too. So
That's so interesting. And I love getting to talk about how businesses get started because they're all different and yet there's a lot of similarities, right, for
yes.
people. So I think there's just so much to relate to in what you've said already. A lot of people start a business out of their home and
Hmm.
then might move it out or are thinking about moving it out of their home. I'm curious to know, how did you make that decision? And was it an easy process or were there some hurdles along the way? Were there any concerns along the way? And how did you navigate those as you made the transition out of your home?
Yeah, for me, and this wasn't something that I came up with. I don't know where I read it, but it was kind of about closing that gap, right? So just looking at the numbers, I could say this is how much I have to bring in to cover rent and utilities and expenses and all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did it out of my home until I closed that gap between what I was bringing in and what I needed to be able to move into a retail location. And so it wasn't a jump, it was just a big step right across that gap. And so for me, I'm not a big risk taker, and so for me that made the most sense. I did it out of my house until we got to a point where it was okay. I think to be able to continue to grow, we need to bring in some of the equipment to do ourselves, and so let's look at those numbers and just get down to the nuts and bolts of it. And do we feel like we are making enough to be able to take on the extra expenses that come with having a physical location?
Yeah, that I think that's so wise about, and people who've listened to the podcast know I am very much about like knowing your numbers. I love how you said
Yeah,
that. But what a great analogy of like you weren't taking a big leap, but it was more of just a big step where I'm
yeah,
sure it felt like a bit of a stretch. I mean, any new a move like that comes
absolutely.
with some risk. Even if you're looking at your numbers and you're thinking things, there's still a risk, right?
Yeah,
But I love that it wasn't like a just a blind leap, which
right.
you got to be careful about.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely one of those where, it was okay, yeah, I'll need to increase our sales or our profit margin to be able to make this work, but it wasn't going to have to increase those numbers by such a big amount that it seemed unrealistic.
Do you remember at all, or if you were to reflect now, like if you were helping advise someone else thinking about it, was there a certain kind of percentage that you felt comfortable with where you felt like that gap was closed enough?
I don't remember any of those exact numbers. When we moved from my house, and I always say we because I think of Anytime Teas as very much the myself, but the people that work there, my
Mm-hmm.
staff, and the people that have worked for me in the past and that work for me now. So I always say we. Um, you know, it was I outsourced all of our printing at the time, so we had a heat press and a vinyl cutter, but all of our screen printing we outsourced, and
Mm-hmm.
so to increase our profit margin, which of course helps, we needed to bring that in house. And so that was a part of it is I couldn't do that at my house.
Right.
But even then, just looking at the sales that we were making to be able to make a higher profit margin on those sales was going to be a big help towards
Mm-hmm.
making that decision of that move.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, as you're able to look at your numbers and see, okay, there's a bigger expense here, maybe being outside of the home, but I'm going to recoup some of that back by being able to bring my margins up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different levers you can pull, right? Where you
Yes.
can think about those things.
And I
When
think
you, oh, go ahead.
the landscape has changed a little bit now because, 14 years ago, there were much fewer home based businesses.
Mm.
Um, there were suppliers that wouldn't sell to us because we didn't have a brick and mortar.
Oh, interesting.
And so, that was another kind of factor is okay, to be able to get some of these suppliers that we're starting to get customers asking for, we
Hmm.
need to be in a brick and mortar location. And then, too, just, as a business grows, obviously, initially, I'm getting orders from my friends and family. And then that kind of increases, and it's the friends of those people.
Hmm.
Well, we were to the point where we're taking orders from people that I don't know at all. Do I want those people to come to my house?
Oh, right.
Do I want then if not, then I have to deliver every order, and that of course is an added expense. So
Hmm.
a lot of factors went into, is this the time to go ahead and make that move?
So curious because I think a lot of times business owners, they hit this point, and you're making a great point here of like, you're kind of outgrowing, right? You're pushing up against space, you're pushing up against being able to serve clients, etc. How did you decide that you wanted to scale and grow it versus just keeping it what it was, right? Because I
Yeah.
think that's always like you don't have to scale and grow things necessarily. Um, so how did you make that decision?
And I think that's a great question because I run against that even now, right? That question
Yeah,
is always there. What is your goal? How big do you want to make it or not make it?
right.
And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's very individualized to the person and to the business.
Hmm.
Um, I had always wanted to be a what I would consider a medium sized, fairly known business.
Hmm.
So I had gone into it with that idea coming from working for a similar company. Even then I thought, man, we could really be working with more clientele and doing more outreach and getting more, do a lot of Council Bluffs, but what about Southwest Iowa? What about into Omaha? So I had always kind of had that desire to make it a little bit bigger than a home-based business. That was kind of always the goal, I think.
That's, I think, helpful because, and again, like, I love how you said, there's no right or wrong answer here. Some people, I think, go in knowing, like you did, I have an idea of about how I want to scale this. Other business owners go into it and then suddenly it starts to explode around them. And then they're like, oh, okay, I've got to make some decisions here,
Yeah.
right? And again, no right or wrong decision on that, but it is interesting how people enter that journey in different
Yes.
ways. And you
Yes.
do want to be thoughtful about it, regardless of what your decision is, for
Yeah.
sure.
We're running up against that now, right? We're pretty well known in Council Bluffs. We do a good amount of business, and so it's very comfortable. We've been, like I said, we steadily grow a little bit every year, but it's pretty comfortable. We know what we can get done, and we've got some recurring clientele and stuff like that. But um, yeah, do we want to go after more? Which of course
Hmm.
comes with new challenges, staffing, equipment, time, or do you keep it as it is? So I think that question is ever present in a business of, yeah, what do you see the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years looking like? What do you want it to be so that you can plan your next moves towards that goal?
Sure. And, it's interesting to think about too is even if a business decides we're about where we want to sustain, we're creating maybe a little more of a lifestyle like
Yeah.
support business. It supports lifestyle for me and for my employees. But at some point, there's an exit. At some point, you won't, and it might be 50 years from now, but you still have to keep that in mind, right? Like, what will my exit be, even if this is more of a lifestyle supportive business? How do I want to, retire out of that? Because
Hmm.
that's, I mean, as far as I know, everybody ages. That's what my experience has been thus far.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to think about those things. And then obviously, if you're looking to scale and you want to franchise or you want to have multiple locations or you just want to get bigger, there's obviously a lot to think about there.
Yes.
I was curious too. So I know that you've leaned heavily into building your business through really strong relationships. Right
Yeah.
now, like you've said, you're a very like local based business with all of like those relationship building aspects. I think there's a lot of businesses out there, even outside of the Council Bluffs area, but who are trying to build their business on that relational equity. And I think you've done a really great job with that. And I'm curious what your insights are for others out there who are looking to build their business the same way.
Yeah, I had a great hack. I coached basketball and softball locally
Mm-hmm.
for over a decade at three different schools. So that was a really great in to the industry that we are. Right, we work
Right.
so closely with local schools and teams that was a really great starting point for me. It obviously connected me to people, but then also, again, that kind of balloon of as your business grows, coaches talk to coaches, athletic
Right.
directors talk to athletic directors. So that was a really great start. Social media, again, this has changed a lot. We were pretty active in on Facebook, and that's still our best platform, but connecting through Facebook and being active there. Um, and I think just being seen, right? So
Mm.
I think that going to events is invaluable. People putting a face to the name, there's so many, there's chamber events, and there are so many, even if it's not a direct networking, there's so many great events that people want to work with people they know. And so
Absolutely.
that, I think that connection is invaluable. I think a lot of now people are like, oh, you have to be online, and that is so important. But to start to build locally, that local connection, which also presents challenges, right? As we've grown, um, it's not realistic for everybody to talk to me when they come into the store.
Right.
And so finding that balance of being a face in the community, but then how does that translate then when somebody calls and they want to talk to me every
Mm-hmm.
time, and getting them over to a staff member, because it just isn't possible for me to help every customer.
Mm-hmm.
So it all that also presents some interesting challenges then as you scale your business.
That is so true. And I've personally, and Michaela and I have personally experienced that as well. And I'm thinking through, I was like, okay, how have we handled that? And I'm just thinking through when Michaela and I had one of our first businesses together, was actually photography, is how we got started together. Um, and it was interesting because I ended up moving over into her city, right? And so we were really integrating. I was really integrating into her network in many ways. I brought a lot of my network as well, but I was really starting to integrate more
Mm-hmm.
locally. And she had the long-standing history here. And it was really interesting because everyone would want to reach out to Michaela about inquiries, et cetera. But I was the one who was kind of handling that
Right.
aspect of the business because that was really my skill set. And so it was interesting for a time. It took a little bit of time, right? But Michaela was really intentional about whenever we were at an event together, and we went to a lot of events together, of introducing me quickly, making sure that people knew that I was like a partner, a decision maker, or had, authority, etc. And
Yes.
then whenever inquiries came in, she would just immediately make a really classy handoff, right? But I had to be aware of that and make sure to like mention things like, hey, Michaela mentioned, XYZ, so that people would feel comfortable. So I was just thinking about that. How can we as business owners empower our team, our business partners, the people around us to have that autonomy? Have you
Yeah.
found anything helpful, or are you still trying to navigate that?
Yeah, I think still trying to navigate that, but we've done I think, a pretty good job. I have a full time customer service person, and all he does is answer emails and phone calls. So he does a really great job of, and we had a discussion about this and put this into practice. Hey, when you answer the phone and someone says, "Can I talk to Rachel?"
Mm,
Say, just say, she's in the other room. Is there anything I can help you with?
Right.
Because a lot of times those are things as simple as I wanted to pay for an order, right? They didn't need to
Right.
talk to me. And then and if we can do that and a staff member can help them, then
Mm.
each time, oh yeah, I didn't have to talk to Rachel for that. Then the next time they call, they're a little more open to dealing with someone else, and just taking myself off of the email signature.
Right.
Something as simple as that has just made a big difference, and it is a transition. And I totally get how customers want to talk to the same person, and I was the person that they talked to for
Right.
8 years or more, and so no fault of the customers for wanting to do that. We just have to transition them over to getting comfortable to talking to another very competent salesperson that honestly you'll probably get better service from, because I'm
Mm.
in and out and again, doing networking things and might not be in the building for a day. And so part of that transition is I want a customer to have the best experiences possible. And that now might be with someone else besides me.
That makes so much sense. And I was just thinking through how she's part of our team and she has taken on so many things. She's really taken ownership of certain areas and she works remotely. So we don't have the same opportunity to introduce her in person like
Yeah.
Mikhail was able to do with me. However, when people inquire about something, and I really know that that's Jenny's, like that's really in her world to handle and not mine, I tell people that point blank in the email, right? Or on the phone. I will literally say, and not to be like self deprecating per se, but I tell them, I actually am a terrible person for that. Jenny is our wizard when it comes. If you really want to get on my calendar, and I really want you to get on our calendar, Jenny's your person, right?
Yeah.
And so by like building her up in the email and saying, I've literally said in email, I would be terrible at making sure to see this through. That's why we have Jenny. She's amazing. She keeps us on track. I think that builds confidence with the client as well to go, oh, okay, great. And it helps build Jenny up so that she knows, like, I fully trust you. You're completely empowered and you're better at this than I am. And I have no problem saying that. Right. And so it's been really fun. I was just thinking, one of my favorite things about this whole topic was when somebody called the office and they asked for Jenny. And I was like, yes, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that was so good. And then when clients come in and they will just rave about Jenny. Oh, she was so great. She got everything together. I was ready to go for my thing. I had everything I needed.
Yes.
And that's really exciting as a
Yeah,
business owner.
I agree. I run into that. Just this weekend, another great local business, Dusted Charm, had posted a shirt that we had made for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they tagged us in it, which is so kind of them. And one of my employees hopped on our Facebook page and shared the post to the page without even asking, just went ahead and did it. Oh my gosh, that was so great.
Perfect. Yeah.
And then it was a shirt that I didn't have anything to do with the order. I didn't even know that it existed until I saw the post.
Oh
And
my
so, yeah,
gosh.
how
That's
cool
great.
is, such a cool feeling to, yeah, things are just trucking along and they're getting done. And, you know, they're, my employees are developing these relationships with these other, companies and businesses and people, and doing exactly what I would have done. And they're doing just a great job of that.
I think this segues really well into a topic I know you wanted to talk about, just the whole done is better than perfect.
Yeah.
And I think there's a million different things we can talk about here, but I was thinking about sometimes I think business owners hesitate to hand off things because they're worried it won't be, I'm air quoting, perfect,
Yeah.
which is really a way of just saying maybe not done the way they would have done it, which isn't
Yes.
necessarily perfect or the best, right? But you were talking about how early in your business you felt like you had more of that philosophy. You're like, I'm just getting it done. I'm getting it done. And then over time, maybe have fallen away from that a little bit. I'm really curious to hear more of your thoughts on the whole done better than perfect and your journey with it.
Yeah. I think another kind of way to put it is analysis paralysis, right?
Mm.
You know, you can go back and forth. Is the website exactly how I want it? Are the pages in the right order? And you can spend, 12 more hours looking at it, and will it do any better than if you would have just published it as it was and made changes as you came across them? As I think early on, I really pushed myself to just say, okay, make that Facebook post. If the picture isn't great and you don't have perfect lighting, that's okay. You're going to get better at it. If you make a mistake and you've got a customer that's maybe not especially pleased, okay, you apologize and you recognize that and you make an improvement, right? But if you spend so much time just, I've got to make this absolutely perfect before I do it, I think you miss out on some opportunities that might be there. And I think that people are pretty understanding in general. So I think that, especially starting out of my house, people knew that, people recognized that, and that was okay. The people that were coming to us were supporting me because they knew me, and so they were okay that things weren't perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I think as we transitioned and you get employees and you get bigger, it's sometimes, I think I have found myself to fall into analyzing things a little bit more, which I don't know is a positive thing in all instances. But, I think they're still into, my employees will joke, they'll say, well, hey, we were thinking about moving this. And I said, okay, great. Just do it. Just do it. And if it's not exactly what you wanted, we'll switch it back. So I strive to do that. I definitely don't always hit the mark always. And obviously the bigger the decision, the easier it is to fall into analyzing it more. But I do think, like, sometimes you just have to do it and go from there and figure it out from there.
Yeah, it's so interesting as I'm just reflecting on what you're saying. It's true. Like, as decisions get bigger, it does require thought, right? So finding that sweet spot of giving it enough consideration that you're not making decisions willy-nilly, if you will.
Yes. Yeah.
But on the flip side, if you don't take the risks like you used to, I'm kind of thinking of it like percentages. Like, does our percentage of risk taking go down as the decision gets bigger, or and should it? It seems like it should stay the same
Yeah.
in our thought process there. But I can hear you on, especially I have found when adding employees or
Yeah.
vendors, people who rely on you, I don't have so much problem taking a risk for myself,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
But as a business scales and grows, you're now taking risks on behalf of yourself and your business, and you are actually taking risk on behalf of the people who are trusting you and are a part of, leading that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe that's where we get more paralyzed as things scale. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think
Thinking
it's
about it.
definitely, I think for a business owner that, really cares about their team and wants to consider those things, I think that is a part of it. Is, yeah, you're no longer taking a risk for yourself, you're taking a risk on behalf of, we have now 14 employees between full-time and part-time, and so
Right.
especially for our full-time employees, yeah, you're taking a risk that could affect their livelihood. And so it definitely makes those bigger decisions definitely need more consideration.
I was also just thinking about this. I'm like personally challenging myself in the middle of this conversation, which I love. It's part of what I love about doing the podcast. I'm like, man, I'm just learning so much. But I feel like when we invite our team in on the risk taking in an appropriate way, that can help, right? Like, to go to your team and be authentic and say, hey, this is feeling like a big risk and I'd really like your input. How do you feel about it? Because I think when you can give that ownership and autonomy, I imagine we might be surprised more often than we think, where a team member is going to say, yeah, absolutely. Like, let's take the risk. Like, I'm on board. And then they can also help mitigate any of the things that come up because they're aware, right? when you hold it all in yourself, I think that's where it starts to feel scary. Your body starts to literally deteriorate and your brain's not working right. And then you're not treating your, team well. And then they're like, what's going on? And then you take this big risk and they're not on board with you. And I think that's where you can really get into some trouble.
Yeah. And, from my experience, they want to be included on those decisions. And even if it is just asking for an opinion, they appreciate that, that little bit of sense of ownership as well. And we talk about that a lot at work, really owning your position, owning what you do and making it yours and looking for opportunities to make it better. And so I think as a small business, that is an important thing to remember. It's okay to ask those people, and everyone has a different perspective. And so they may think about things in a different way and bring things up to your attention. So when you're considering that decision, you're not just tunnel vision on what your experiences and your thoughts are on it. They may bring something else to the table that you hadn't considered.
Hey there, busy to the brim people. Are you feeling overwhelmed with your social media? Well, you're not alone. It's a common challenge in our digital world. Creating social content can be a tricky beast to tame for people like you and I. So I'm popping into my own podcast to tell you that there is a solution, and it's called a social sidekick. This isn't just a typical social media content service. We offer a partnership through Tandem Works and our team to take your social media from overwhelming to extraordinary. Having a social sidekick is a game changer for your business. Imagine having a 12-month custom strategy tailored to your brand, content that's done for you that truly resonates with your audience, and growth tactics that actually work for Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. With a social sidekick, you get more than just posts. We're very committed to that. You get a partnership. We're here to help manage your social media with a personal touch, ensuring your message is not just heard, but felt. So if you're ready to take your social media from overwhelming to outstanding, I'd love for you to visit the website, thetandemworks.com/social-sidekick-content-creation. Don't worry, there's a link in the show notes, and you can discover there how a social sidekick can transform your digital presence. Let's make your digital presence as impactful as your business with a social sidekick, where we're amplifying your story one post at a time. Okay, let's jump back in.
You had mentioned about your business. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, I know you do more than t-shirts, but a little bit about just your business model in general. And especially you mentioned before this, like one of your biggest challenges was, no surprise here, I think, but was going through the pandemic because your business relied at the time, at least, and I imagine even now, but you tell us, on events and things taking place. Like if people have to see printed apparel in order to receive the value of it, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like? And was your team involved in that? And how did you make decisions? And what did you do? And what could we take from that and apply to even just things that come up now? Even if there's no pandemic, there's lessons learned, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously for any business owner and everyone, the pandemic brought some challenges that nobody was really prepared for. So for us, as you mentioned, we're so heavy in schools and events and businesses. Mm-hmm. So of course, when schools shut down and we're not playing spring sports in 2020, and no events are happening, there's not 5Ks, there's not family reunions, and then of course other businesses aren't spending money, right? Everyone was saying, oh, we got to hold on to this because we don't know what this is going to look like.
Right.
And so that was definitely a huge hit, a huge concern, the unknown of that. Like I said, luckily I have a great team. So employee wise, we did send people home. They got on unemployment as needed, and everyone was great about that. Everyone completely understood. We brought people back when we could and as we could. And I continued to work, of course, and then I had my production manager at the time, and we just split. I'd go in the morning, she'd take care of her kids during the day, and go in the afternoon or evening and print anything that we did have to print. Mm-hmm. So we made that work. And then the big thing for us is we did some pivoting. We did masks. We did several iterations of masks. Again, done is better than perfect. I'm online on all the apparel printing forums, and people are using their engraver and cutting masks out of sweatshirts
Right.
before people started producing. So we did that. And then once companies started producing masks, we did a lot of that. And we printed a lot of masks. We did a lot of masks for a lot of different groups and schools. The other big thing for us at that time was yard signs and banners. So, graduation time, we did a big campaign. We partnered actually with a printer friend in Omaha and sold yard signs, class of 2020, and that people could stick in the front yard for, all the drive-by graduations and stuff like that. So, and then the other thing we did, which wasn't new to us, but maybe a new way to do it, is we called it a Here for Good campaign. So we contacted local businesses and said, hey, we want to design a shirt and throw it up on a web store. We sold them for $25, I believe. $5 covered the fees, $10 went to the business, and $10 went to us.
Cool.
And all the business had to do was promote it. So we did that. I think it ended up being about 20 or 25 businesses that said, okay, let's do it. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, ran that. And it was a way that they could make a little money and we could make a little money. And so we did that as well. So, and again, none of those ideas were mine, but we definitely said, let's go ahead and let's try it out. This is working for other printers in other areas of the country. And again, done better than perfect. Let's do it. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something else.
Yeah, iterate again. And that, I think, is really important for, I think, lessons I keep hearing again and again out of that as it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but it is kind of a while ago now, right?
Yeah.
But just that ability to be flexible is a key component of being an entrepreneur. And it doesn't have to be a pandemic. There are so many reasons why you have to be ready and be flexible and be nimble and kind of on your toes, right? Not sitting back.
Absolutely.
Because things can come up that you're not expecting. And having plans and being able to be flexible with your thoughts, I think, is just a huge mindset piece that's important when you're running a business. And everyone kind of got put through the gauntlet with that and had to dig deep fast, right?
Yeah.
But I think there was also a lot of camaraderie. Like you said, people were sharing ideas and they wanted other businesses to make it. And I think there was a lot of community building that is important to continue forward, right? That we can
Absolutely.
support each other's businesses. I would love to talk a little bit about a little of a pivot here as far as topics go, but what are some of the benefits to a business thinking about having printed like swag or t-shirts or hats or banners? Like maybe haven't done that before. What are some of the things that you help businesses through when they're like, okay, we're thinking about doing something? I know Michaela and I talk all the time. We're like, we love a good t-shirt. So it's just fun to have, but I think there's a lot more benefit to it than it just being fun. What have you found for businesses and community members?
Yeah. And it's really interesting and fun because we work with businesses of all sizes. We work with the business that is just getting started and they have a limited budget, and how do we use that to make the most impact? And then we work with, Google and LinkedIn and bigger businesses that maybe the impact isn't as much with those dollars, right?
Right.
So, we like to work with the business and say, yeah, like, what is someone going to actually wear? What are you doing with this order? Is this something that you're wearing? To shout out another business on the 100 block, we've worked with Bloomworks. Hey, we're going to set up a wedding and we want to be identified when we're in there setting up the flowers with the other vendors. Why are we there? Mm-hmm. And so I think shirts and branded apparel of any kind, depending on the business, provide different things. So sometimes it's purely identification. Why is this the right mower that's in my yard mowing my lawn? Oh yeah, I see their logo on the back. And sometimes it's giveaways, right? Trade shows, and we want to help you to make sure you're getting something that somebody's going to wear, or somebody's going to, it's a pen that somebody's going to write with and not just throw in a desk drawer and never see again. So all of that stuff, yeah. What's the goal of this? What are you using it for? When we work with a lot of places that are raising money. So whether it is or large or small, hey, is the goal of this awareness so that people see your shirts when they're walking around, or is the goal of this fundraising? Because we can then advise you, hey, let's do less print colors and print in one location on the shirt instead of two, because we're really looking to raise money, versus let's go all out and make this really cool so that people want to wear it more because this is for awareness.
Right.
So just listening to a customer and what their goal is, or trying to help them to define what their goal is, to help them pick the best products that can do that within what their budget is.
Right. So many different considerations. And I was just thinking back to when in my previous business, I had a video production company, and one of our businesses was called Tin Box Weddings.
Okay.
And it was brand new. We still were doing a lot of photo, video. And this is a business prior to what we do now. But we went to wedding shows. That was definitely a thing. And we chose to wear printed t-shirts that had our Tin Box name on it. And they were white t-shirts with like the green, they call that a ring. Is it a ringer?
Ringer, yep.
Yeah, so I had the green around the collar, green around the sleeves.
Yeah.
It was kind of distinctive. And we chose to do that because it really stood out, because at a bridal show at the time, everyone dressed up really nice. It was like, don't take this wrong for listeners out there, but it was kind of what I would call like banker attire, right? Where, button-ups, skirts, heels, just very formal.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, our brand is a little different. We still do a great job. We have great professionalism, but we really want to identify as being casual and down to earth and there with you. So we wore these t-shirts. It was a little risky because it was a big statement in the room. And oh my gosh, Rachel, we had so many people walk up and they're like, I was so drawn to your brand. Like, you just stood out as being different. And I wanted to know what was going on over here. And one of the interesting things that happened out of it was usually it tends to be, if it's a man and woman are getting married, partners, that the woman would approach, right? And talk to us. That just tended to be the way it went. We had so many guys, grooms, who would come up and they're like, hey, what's going on over here? Because the t-shirt felt approachable, I think.
Yeah.
So I just think about that, like how branded apparel really stood out and helped our business in a very unique way. And it simply came down to 2 t-shirts that we wore. Interestingly, I see a little more casualness at those shows and stuff now, but many years ago that was not the case. So it really was a standout piece. But
absolutely,
I love that. Like, what's the goal, right?
Right. Yeah. And sitting down and having a conversation with people about it and learning about their business and just getting to know them a little bit and what their personality is, so we can make suggestions. We want you to want to wear the product, or if you're giving it away, for the people to want to use the chip clip or whatever it might be.
Right.
And so figuring out what exact combination of things achieves that goal. I nerd out a little bit. I think it's a fun challenge. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Speaking of fun challenges, one of the things you'd mentioned is that your business is called Anytime Tees. However, you've mentioned banners and masks and chip clips and pens and all these different things.
Yeah.
When you started, was it only t-shirts and that's why you chose the name? And have you ever maybe regretted it is too strong of a word, but I hear this conundrum, right, come up all the time for business owners. Like, well, we were this and now we're this, and what do we do about our name?
Yeah.
How's that? Like, talk me through it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of a branding and marketing challenge, right? We get that. We do run into that a little bit. We also get the question like, would you have all these things listed on your website? Well, it'd be impossible to list everything that we could print. So yeah, definitely, again, done better than perfect. When people say, well, how'd you come up with the name? And I think I brainstormed about 10 names, and then I looked to see if the domain was available and the social media was available. And that's how I determined the name. So to me, it was, we'll make it into the name, right? Nike was nothing until they made it Nike. So I wasn't too romantic about the name when I made it. But yeah, it is a challenge. And, our main thing is t-shirts. That's what we do the most of. But we always try to just make customers aware of those other things that we can print. And we've done different iterations of our logo where we've put screen printing, embroidery, promotional products, and tried to do it that way. But like you said, regret's too strong of a word, but it's definitely could we have named it different to express that? What does that look like? But yeah, since we've already crossed that bridge and we are what we are, it's just, slipping that into emails when we're talking to people or on phone calls when we're talking to them, making sure we're promoting those other things that we do print when we print them and getting pictures of those up on social media and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting one. And I'm glad that you did say, like, don't regret it, right? Like, I talked to so many business owners like, oh my gosh, we made this decision and now I'm like going to regret it, And I'm like, well, look, 14 years ago, your business was what it was, and you make decisions with the information you have. And you can't possibly project for everything that's going to happen in a year, let alone 14 years. And one of the things I know we've advised a couple of clients in similar situations is that, well, one, it is okay to do a rebrand if at some point it feels, if it feels that it's that misaligned, it is okay. And you'll overcome that hump, right? Big brands do it, small brands do it, can be done. The other thing we say though is like, embrace the fact that it is what it is and that you have changed, but make it the thing, right? So that's one of the things we've advised some clients is go funny with it. Like, but say it all the time. Like, you probably think we only do t-shirts, but let me show you, and all these things. Or you're like anytime tease and you do it in a humorous way. You have somebody walk up and like, and you could do such fun things with humor by saying it over and over and by almost not poking fun at yourself, but using it in a humorous way. Just name the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that sometimes sticks better. It can stick so much better than this like perfect name that's so elusive out there. So yeah. I love it. I love that you talk about that. I love the whole, don't get paralyzed, make a decision and it'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that, just having, and I think that with this scenario and with many, just have fun with it. It's, let's find a way to poke fun at ourselves a little bit. And I love that philosophy.
Yeah. So Rachel, I love to do a couple of rapid fire questions. They're just off the cuff questions. Answer as you will.
Perfect.
But they're just fun. Get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit more. Dive into a couple of concepts. So Rachel, when you think about businesses and owning a business, what do you think is one of the biggest like misconceptions about owning a business?
Oh man, I always got this comment from people that'd say, well, it's great you own a business, you get to work whenever you want, and yes, technically that is true. I'm here doing the podcast with you this morning and not at work. But you're also always on, right? So if somebody forgot to turn off the flash dryer on the production side and they remember at 9:00 on Friday night, guess who's going back to turn it off?
That's right.
When a team makes it to state and on Saturday night and they need the shirts done on Tuesday, and that email comes in that they need rush artwork done, guess who's answering that email? When an employee quits with no notice and there's no one to do emails until you get somebody hired, guess who's doing that? So yeah, I do get to make my own hours, but that's juxtaposition with you're always on, right? I always have my phone near me between the hours of 8:30 when my staff gets there and 7 when they leave, so that if something pops up, they can get a hold of me. So definitely a balance of those two things.
Absolutely. Rachel, is there a piece of advice that you've been given and you've actually applied to your business?
I'm sure that there are many. I worked with the Iowa Western has a small business development center. I worked with them when I was getting started on some things. I try to stay there's some industry podcasts that I listen to directly about custom printed apparel that I listen to a lot. And I try to glean as much information from other people who are more experienced than me or have different experiences than me, as much as possible. I can't think of a particular piece of advice, but I know that there have been countless small pieces of advice or just practical things that I have tried and succeeded at, or tried and they didn't work for my particular business, through the years.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like, there's almost so much advice you can't even think about it, right? Like, it just all comes together.
Absolutely.
Is there something based off of what you know now about life and business that you would tell a younger version of yourself?
I think, like we talked about, done is better than perfect. I tried to do this, but even more so now. I think this is the Gary Vee thing that he says, 99% of things don't matter, right? Don't worry about small stuff, or things maybe even you think aren't small, but in the grand scheme of things are going to be, we're successful and we still lose clients. Right. I still see people post that they got shirts printed somewhere else, and that used to really bug me. And it still bugs me a little bit, but I've learned that's okay. Like, if they go somewhere else, that's okay. That must have been a better situation for them, and hopefully it works. And if it doesn't, I hope they come back and use us again. Or, an employee might make a decision at work that might not be the decision that I would have made, but it still got the job done, like we were talking about earlier. Right. And so I think just really things are going to work out. Just trust that they're going to work out and put the work into it still. That doesn't mean don't care about anything. But just, just relax. It's going to work out. Like I said, 99% of decisions aren't going to probably matter in a year. So
yeah, that's a really good perspective of like what is going to matter. So you said relax, which is actually my next question.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite quick, like, kick back and relax beverage?
Oh man, I have an addiction to Scooter's blenders.
Oh.
So I drink way too much coffee, including those. I'm sipping on a coffee here today. So I drink a lot of coffee. And then I am a real sucker for strawberries and cream Dr. Pepper. I don't know if you've had that.
I have not.
Yeah, we have a drink fridge at work. So we provide our employees with LaCroix and soda while they work during the day. And so I tell my manager that purchases that not to purchase that drink because I won't be able to resist.
That's right. You got to be careful about that.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you really like to listen to a couple different podcasts, and that I'm curious, are there any songs or books or podcasts that are just really inspiring you right now?
Yeah, there's this is kind of esoteric, but there's a screen printing podcast. It's called Print Hustlers. It's put on by the company we use for our order management software. So it's very specific to our industry. That is always a good listen. I used to listen to a lot of Gary Vee, who's just a general business advice person. So
Mm-hmm.
that one would always get me motivated when I'd listen to that one in the morning. And so those are good ones, definitely. The Gary Vee, especially, I recommend to people. I think a lot of, especially his maybe earlier stuff is pretty motivating.
Yeah, it is. I remember listening to a lot of Gary Vee at the beginning of like owning a business, and you're
Yeah.
right, like it's very motivating to the point where sometimes have to be like, I have to take a break
Yes,
because
I can't listen to
I
this
need to like get through some of my motivation here. My motivation bank is full, and
Yeah,
now I need to do some stuff.
absolutely.
What really excites you about the future, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been for the past probably, this process of transitioning out of me being the everyday customer service person has been a challenging one with some ebbs and flows. So we're in a good spot right now where I probably only do 20% of that direct customer service.
Awesome.
Which of course opens up a lot of time to be more working on the business instead of in the business, and planning for the future and what the next short term and long term looks like for Anytime Teas. And so I'm excited to really settle into that role of being a more strategic business owner and doing more planning and stuff like that. So I'm excited for that. I feel like we're through that transition for the most part. There'll always be, I think, some clients that I hang on to that I know or just want to have my hands in a little bit. So, but for the most part, through that transition. And so I'm excited to really settle into that more ownership role.
That's awesome. When well, let me actually ask this way. Is there something that people often get wrong about you?
Oh man. I would say, so I'm pretty introverted. I think even, you guys had put out a post of people wanting to be on the podcast, and one of my employees actually reached out
Oh, good.
to say that you should interview me. I'm pretty introverted. So I'm not great at going to those networking events and being seen. It gives me a little bit of trepidation and anxiety a little bit. So I'm not great at those things.
Right.
I can turn it on when I need to. But I think most people probably think that I'm extroverted, but I'm pretty reserved.
Yeah, same here. Common misconception for me
Yes.
too. We actually did some podcast, Michaela and I, who's extroverted, on like networking and how we network in very different ways. So it's kind of a fun listen for both extroverts and introverts, because
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like I actually love the podcast because it's great for an introverted soul, right? But big events and things, you'll probably see me around the edges of the room a little more,
Yes.
and then I like dive in, and then I'm like back on the edges. So I get that
Yes.
for sure.
Yes, I need always an ambassador when I go to those networking events.
Yes.
A person
We'll
I
have
know.
to look for each other.
Yes, exactly.
I love though that one of your team asked for you to be on the podcast. See, that's great. And just like a great reminder for people listening, we do take suggestions for podcast guests. So if you're thinking that you'd be great on the podcast, if you're listening, I'd love to have you apply. If you think someone from your team would be great, I'd love to have you apply them. Like what happened with Rachel's. That's awesome. So,
Yes.
Okay, last question for you.
Okay.
What do you think business owners can do to make the world a better place, Rachel?
We talked a lot about community, and I think just being a member of your community, and community can mean a lot of different things, and it can change and evolve, right? One of my communities is my team at work. And so, affecting those people directly within reach, I think is a great start. Really taking care. I try to really take care with my employees, and like you said, be aware of that responsibility as a business owner that I have to those people. and take that very seriously. But then as you grow, or as you have the more capacity, what else is that community? I always like to tell people I'm a TJ grad, and so my community is, the Thomas Jefferson community. And obviously I live in Council Bluffs. I have lived in Council Bluffs, so Council Bluffs is my community. And so just taking care of whatever your community is, and whatever you have the capacity for at the time, just taking care of those people, I think that's a great start. That's all we can ask of anybody, I think, really.
Yeah, that's huge. I'm definitely with you. I could co-sign all of the things that you just said. This has been really fun. And Rachel, I really appreciate just your candidness. That's one of the things that we love on this podcast, is just bringing on business owners who are willing to be candid and open. Yeah. So I appreciate you being candid about things that have worked well, things that maybe were a challenge, things that you are overcoming. So thank you for sharing that. And especially just talking about that whole aspect of, like, don't be afraid, do your research, think about it, but then get out and do it. Like, you don't hold yourself back. Getting it done is better than perfect. The paralysis by analysis, I think is the way you put it. Yeah, like, we've got to be careful about that as business owners. Like, yes, we have responsibilities, but part of our responsibility is to be risk takers in the world. And that's an exciting place to be in, I think. It's a good space to be in.
Yes, I agree.
Rachel, if people would like to connect with you or follow you, or even reach out to Anytime Teas, what's the best way for them to do that? And we'll, of course, put links in show notes and that, but what's the best way for them to find more information?
Yeah, so Anytime Teas is, we luckily have all of those handles, right? So we're Anytime Teas on Facebook, on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Twitter. Our website is just anytimeteas.com, so that makes it super simple. I am always happy to interact with anybody that has questions. So, just search me, and I'm sure you'll find, my Facebook, or reach out to the store, and they can always get a hold of me that way too. So
just be sure that you're saying, I'm not calling for an invoice. I'm calling for a business ownership question. Yes.
A good gatekeeper, so he'll put you to the test for sure, but he'll give me the message.
That's perfect. That's awesome. That's one of the things I just really love to encourage people who are listening. Some of our guests are like you, Rachel, who are local to where we record the podcast. And some are not. Some are, from all across the nation and world even. So, but one of the things I want to encourage is that don't just think, oh, Rachel's in Council Bluffs, Iowa, I'm in California or Texas or whatnot. Like, we can have a network all over the place and reach out to people. I just reached out to a woman who lives in a completely different state, looking for some advice for myself. Like, we don't have to just stick to our local communities. Like you said, we all have these different communities. So I always encourage people, like, if something from today's episode intrigued you, if you would like more thoughts or advice from Rachel about something, or maybe you're starting a print business in another state, it's like, reach out. Like, don't be afraid to reach out. That's why we have guests come on, so we can build that community.
Yeah, and don't be an introvert like us. Just reach out. The worst that's going to happen is you won't hear back, right? And
that's right.
I'll definitely get back to you. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. I think, I guess just for myself, I'm always happy to interact, and I'll probably learn something from you. So
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.